a Chinese spacecraft returns to Earth in the not-too-distant future carrying a recently found energy source called Xianting. It replaces conventional energy sources in a short period of time, and cities see unprecedented and extremely rapid growth. Unfortunately, utilizing so much of this energy attracts an extraterrestrial race, who one day sends ships to attack all of the world's main cities in retaliation for stealing the Xianting. All of the cities are completely unprepared for the onslaught and are left in ruins since there is no Xianting to rely on. A revolutionary defensive system is eventually developed at an emergency summit of 97 heads of state held in Shanghai in order to rescue the world's only remaining city. The Grey Eagle team, made up of Jiang, Xingyu, Yi, and Pan, uses a simulation in which aliens dispatch their flying robots for another assault while Jiang, Xingyu, Yi, and Pan operate the most recent versions of military drones to engage the robots in combat. They operate well together since they all have complementary abilities and because Commander Lin Lan herself taught them. Commander Yin is delighted with the outcomes and remarks that Jiang is very skilled at piloting. Lin Lan backs up this observation by claiming he is by far the greatest. Jiang was a former member of the logistical team that constructed the Shanghai cannon, which has allowed Shanghai to be the final citadel still standing. But when circumstances worsened, he enlisted in the fighting squad to support them. Jiang runs to the elevator after finishing another training day so he may go with Lin Lan, who he has a big crush on. Jiang wants to give Lin Lan a flower for her birthday today, but he is anxious and uncomfortable about doing so. He musters up his confidence just as Lin Lan steps out of the elevator. Jiang sends her a message about the training later, at home, and is happy to discover that she responded positively. Later, Yoon informs Lin Lan that New Delhi has also been the target of an extraterrestrial invasion and requests that she utilize the knowledge she has gained there to strengthen their defenses. The castle suddenly issues a code red alert. It turns out that an extraterrestrial mothership has emerged above Shanghai. The city's residents start to fear, but the soldiers quickly direct them to the appropriate shelters where they can join their teams in the stronghold. The city has several defenses, including a unique force field that blocks the mothership's initial laser onslaught. The force field can only hold up for so long until the aliens send an army of robots through the breach that the beam managed to produce before the engineers can repair it. The drone's pilots instantly deploy them to battle while taking care not to harm any civilians who are still rushing for cover. The girl nearly gets struck by one of the robots as they reach the citadel and land in the middle of the road, but Jiang manages to shove her out of the path just in time. The artillery squad opens fire to attempt to stop the robot from firing at everything in its route as it starts shooting at everything in its path. Jiang makes several unsuccessful attempts to assist, but just then, a tank driven by Lin Lan shows up and quickly obliterates it. The mothership departs the region for the time being after the drones finish eliminating the remaining robots just in time for the engineers to finish repairing the force field. Later, the committee is informed by the scientific division that during the battle, they scanned the mothership and identified a weakness in it. The committee wants to fire the Shanghai cannon against it, but Yoon forbids them because a backlash would endanger lives. After that, Ian takes Lin Lan to a secure location to explain that Shanghai is home to the final deposit of Xianting, which is extremely unstable and the only thing, along with the castle and the force field, that saves the city from collapsing. They would waste all of the remaining Xianting and render the city defenseless if they fired the cannon. The greatest defense against the aliens is to keep honing their Eagle squad so they can one day take the place of the force field. In the meantime, Jiang and his buddies are relaxing on a rooftop, having a drink and discussing their future plans if there weren't a war going on. Pen really wants to complete his bike and ride it without restriction. An emergency call abruptly interrupts them and warns them the city is once more under siege. They immediately return to the stronghold and prepare to engage in combat. The force shield activates as normal to block the approaching beams, but Pan sees something odd. The hostile robots continue to remain passive despite several holes being made in the shield. This helps him realize that this is a trap. The aliens are forcing them to keep fixing the field in order to deplete their supply of Xianting and render the city vulnerable. The robots ultimately enter the stronghold as a beam passes through the barrier again and causes significant damage inside. The soldiers are forced to engage in direct combat, but simple gunfire is insufficient, and many of them lose their lives as a result. Although they can't accomplish much and prefer to go inside to take control of the drones, the Eagles enter the battle as backup to assist. The committee sends a man to trigger the cannon in defiance of Ian's orders, as the Eagles utilize the drones to start repairing the force field. To prevent losing all of their Xianting, they don't utilize the whole force. Yet it still strikes the mothership strongly enough. The field is successfully repaired by the Eagles as well, forcing the mothership to depart. A robot nearby indicates that it is not as ruined as they initially believed. Later in the evening, the Eagles spend some time engaging in their individual interests, and Jiang finally has the guts to ask Lin Lan to go biking. The Eagles have been promoted as a result of their outstanding performance last night, Jiang learns as he awakens. However, this turns out to be a dream. The squad heads to a club to celebrate their promotion when he says they should, but Jiang can't help but think about Lin Lan the entire time. He observes him moping on the roof, and tells him not to be scared to express his affections to Lin Lan since he never knows if the aliens would let him to do so in the future. Later, the crew witnesses on television as the cannon shooter receives an even bigger promotion and mentions a loved one while speaking. Jiang becomes very depressed and believes that this is Lin Lan. Jiang is shocked to see Lin Lan when he goes to a noodle restaurant for dinner later that night. They talk about the stress of needing to preserve the world and express sorrow over the lives lost in combat. Jiang is eventually courageous enough to present the gift to Lin Lan as a means of reassuring her after observing how anxious she is. Jiang sends her a message after she departs asking her to meet the following day. He is happy to find that she agrees. To impress his date the following day, Pan and Xingyu dress Jiang in a leather jacket. However, he feels it is inappropriate and makes him put on his uniform in its place. Jiang sees Lin Lan a little while later and is dismayed to learn that she merely wanted to speak with him to check on the generators. Lin Lan tells Jiang about her training days and how her father had been a frigid soldier who had perished in combat when he is doing the upkeep. As Lin Lan sobs over the memories and looks up at the stars, she tells Jiang that she wishes they could create a time in the future where children could gaze up and see the stars rather than the beams that support the force field. Later, when the ground appears to be beginning to crack, it appears as though an unseen earthquake has struck the region, and this causes people to fear. Yoon informs the committee that there is a chance the force field could collapse soon since the energy deposits are unstable, and the usage of the cannon has made them worse. Yoon hurries back to the command center to direct the Eagles in mending the force field flaws after they are suddenly alerted to their presence. The field returns to normal as a result of expert collaboration, but at this rate it will only last temporarily. A robot enters the command center at that same time via the roof and starts killing people. With their weapons, the troops attempt to stop it, but the bullets have no effect. The robot doesn't think twice about hitting Pan in return before pulling him to the force field panel to disable it. Pan tries attacking the robot with a fire extinguisher, but it doesn't work either. Pan triggers the self-destruct sequence with his last breath, and Jiang and Xingyu have to eject a Sabingi from the chamber before it blows up. The force field is quickly raised after the robot has been destroyed. The squad pays Pan and the other victims the respect they deserve in the evening, and he is handed Pan's tags. Jiang gives Pan his bike key as they go back to their dorms since he had always wanted her to have it. Later, the committee considers abandoning up on Shanghai, but Yoon rejects the idea and says he has prepared a strategy for their final opportunity. In order for the cannon to be powerful enough to really destroy the mothership, the force field must be turned off and all of that energy directed against it. The Eagles agree to the mission even though it is extremely risky because they will now have to play defense rather than shield. Lin Lan is also instructed by Yoon to remain in the Xianting chamber and keep watch. To allow soldiers to battle more freely and have tanks stationed at every corner, all people are dispatched to shelters until the streets are entirely deserted. Each soldier hides an item inside a box that will survive 100 years before they enter the battle, just in case the city is destroyed along with them. He also leaves Pan's keys in addition to a letter for Xingyu's parents. Jiang picks up his phone, but not before he texts Lin Lang to express his affections. Sadly, it isn't sent because of the present power issues. Instead of operating the drones, the Eagles will have to pilot actual aircraft this time. The alien robots descend and engage in a violent aerial battle as soon as the force barrier is dispelled. A few robots fly past them to assault the command center, despite the Eagles' best efforts to coordinate their talents in the air with an army of drones. Yoon gives his colleagues some motivational parting words before the room erupts, taking his life. The Eagles and the tanks then rush to try to halt the robots, as they start moving toward the Xianting complex. Lin Lan examines the cannon and sees it completely charged. They just need to wait for the mothership to move into position as another fight breaks out, with both sides losing men every second. One of the robots hops into Yi's aircraft after they successfully breach the line of defense on the ground. Jiang instructs her to flip before flying closer to hit the robot with his own aircraft, thus taking out the adversary while also setting fire to one of his own wings. Jiang is forced to flee in the emergency pod, which crashes slap dab in the center of the conflict. When a robot is ready to murder him, he appears and kills it with her plane. He then joins the battle with his guns, firing at the robots as near as possible. She then enters the battle on foot, intent on exacting revenge on Pan. In the meantime, Xingyu attempts to nudge the mothership toward the cannon by flying toward it. However, there are too many robots around him, so he needs support. He hastily returns to the command center where, while grieving for Pan, she detonates a special grenade that kills a significant number of robots while also taking her own life. The mothership eventually moves as Jiang uses Yi's plane to rejoin Xingyu in the skies. The cannon is promptly fired, setting off a massive explosion that also ruins the nearby structures. Everyone is startled to learn that the attack was unsuccessful after the dust settles because the robots fired to defend the mothership. The cannon was fired using the energy from the force field, but as a last option, they can shoot one more using the leftover Xianting energy. Lin Lan remembers with virtually little hope left. The city will be rendered helpless, and the land will sink as a result. Accepting the dangers, the cannon starts refilling as Jiang and Xingyu continue to guard it. When a robot gets to enter the Xianting complex and starts killing everyone in its path, Lin Lan pulls the lever to start the last line of defense. Jiang cries as Lin Lan gives a moving statement before passing away as the entire city and surrounding area start to collapse, taking the robot with them. Even worse, the soldiers learn that the navigation system of the gun was harmed during the sinking. Xingyu flies ahead to clear the path as Jiang instructs them to unlock the infrared guiding gadget and lock it in place so he can direct the cannon. When the robots follow the bait and pursue Xingyu, he self-destructs, taking them down with him. Since the mothership is no longer protected, Jiang flies directly towards it to act as a guide, and the cannon fires its final charge, thus destroying the ship. As the days go by, Shanghai is being steadily rebuilt using conventional technology rather than Xianting. Jian is subsequently granted the greatest promotion once it is discovered that he escaped by ejecting the pod just before the cannon impacted. He still sincerely misses his crew though, and enjoys going back to the spots where they used to congregate. A coworker delivers him the box where he put his phone when he goes to the noodle restaurant one evening. Jiang examines it and sees that Lin Lan simply answered, "Received," after receiving his confession. Jiang sends her one more message with the words, "Sleep well," and has tears in his eyes. A flashback then reveals that Jiang received advice from Lin Lan on how to complete the application when he decided to join the army. That day, he had fallen in love with her, and the stronghold was his final stop.